Welcome to this week's edition of the Comic Hero Show. I'm your host, Victor Dudley, and I am the Comic Hero. Now, you're probably wondering, Vic, did you go to the Haunt branch of the Bossier Parish Library for Comic Book Day like you said you were? Yeah. Did you do the show there? Well, I was about to. But then, two young women came in, and they didn't really know that much about comics. They only knew the gist of them through some of the movies that have come out over the past few decades. And they wanted to know more about comics. So it became a Q&A session. And not only did they participate in the Q&A session, also my mom, my sister participated. Also, the person who invited me, Felicia Sweeney, she had participated in it. And y'all can probably guess that. Y'all probably know when y'all right before y'all clicked on this episode that this episode is a little more than an hour long, and there's a reason for that, because the Q&A session took almost an hour. Well, overall it took a little more than an hour, but then I started filming, and then that took an hour. So this episode, though, this episode's going to be a little different because of that. There's only going to be two other segments I'm going to have, and that's the free tea giveaway and the comic books up on this week. Now, I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to let y'all watch the Q&A session at the first annual comic book day at the Haunt branch of the Bossier Parish Library. Take a look. Okay. Now, what are you asking?
Can you give me more background on Eric Killmonger?
Okay, well, Eric Killmonger, in the comics, they never mentioned that I don't think he was already a citizen of Wakanda. In the movie, though, he lived most of his life in the States. Mm-hmm. But they made it, that's the one thing about what the difference between movies and comics, they try to make things a lot more interesting. But Killmonger, the one in the comics, he wanted the same thing that the one in the movies. He wanted to be ruler of Wakanda because he felt T'Challa wasn't good enough. And he felt like Wakanda, he felt that Wakanda wasn't, he thought he could do a better job at ruling Wakanda, all that. And so they fought against each other. This literally happened in the comics as well as in the movie. They fought each other. T'Challa lost. Killmonger became the new ruler of Wakanda. He even now in the movie, he came up with his own suit. And now I didn't really start reading Black Panther until a few years ago. So although I did do some research on the entire Black Panther mythos, and I didn't. I don't think Killmonger had a suit when he was ruler of Wakanda. The only difference is in the movies, in the movie Black Panther, T'Challa fought him again and won. In the comics, he had to go through this other ritual, and he found out that he was unworthy, and that's how T'Challa ended up being king of Wakanda again. Although at one point his uncle was a ruler of Wakanda, which is T'Chaka's brother. Now T'Chaka was a character that was in Captain America's Civil War, and he was gunned down, and that's how T'Challa became the king of Wakanda, because he was mainly because one, he was the son of the king, and two, he was already next in line. Mm-hmm. And and I think in the comics his father dies too, but I don't think he was murdered, but not the same way as in Captain America's Civil War.
So all these comic book characters coexisted at the same time?
Not all at the same time. Some of them, like Black Panther, didn't make his debut until 1966 in an issue of Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four was in 1961. Avengers, I think, 2 years earlier, 1964. Captain America was created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, and this was during World War II. This was while that was going on. Only difference was at the time they told stories while the war was going on, but then they stopped for some reason. And then I think Stanley and Jack Kirby, they stopped when he went up against the Red Skull, and the plane that he was in exploded, and he ended up in the river.
So, do comic book characters and the settings and plots, do it kind of like relate to what's going on in the world at the time?
They can, and they have. There was an issue there was a Black Panther miniseries that came out in the '70s where he comes to the States and he goes up against the Ku Klux Klan.
What happened?
He won.
What happened?
Okay, what happened? Well, he knew that they were like burning crosses and going up against black people. He was totally against that, and he tried to just talk to them. They didn't want to hear it. So then after that, he just let his fist do the talking.
Mm-hmm. So, what's your what's the next comic book character that you can foresee in the future?
Well, there have been so many books or so many characters that have made their debuts. I mean, really, I would like to. I mean, there's so many of different ethnicities. There's so many. I mean, and a lot of them have been created within the last 20 or 30 years. One of my favorite. I mean, there's even a character who's of Indian descent named Ms. Marvel, whose real name is Kamala Khan, and her powers are shape-shifting and then altering her size. And she actually debuted her very own book, Ms. Marvel #1, a few years ago, and she's now a member of a team of superheroes called the Champions, which also consists of other characters like let's see. I just recently started reading this book, and I know Hulk was one of them, but this is a different Hulk. This isn't Bruce Banner. This is one of the smartest people on the planet, who's only 16 years old. His name is Amadeus Cho.
Really?
Yes, and then also Cyclops, or a younger version of him from a different timeline, is also a member of it. Marvel, they come up with such different story arcs. There was this Marvel series called New X-Men, or All New X-Men, where Beast, the original Beast, goes back in time. He doesn't like all the stuff that mutants are going through, so he goes back in time, and he finds the 5 original X-Men, including a younger version of himself, and bring them to the present. Mm-hmm. Because he felt like if they come to the timeline, then some of the stuff that's already happened will be erased. Didn't work like that. Didn't work out very well, and they ended up not going back to their original time. They're stranded in the present day Marvel universe, but they're still a team. Although Cyclops is also a member of the Champions, like I said. But there's been I'm sorry.
What's your least likely Marvel character? I would say mine is Spider-Man. I don't see anything fascinating about Spider-Man.
Well, Spider-Man, he has this motto that his Uncle Ben once told him. It's called, "With great power comes great responsibility." Sometimes he's responsible, but then there are other times, because he lives a double life as himself and Peter Parker. Sometimes it can be easier said than done. There was a story arc where Dr. Octopus, or Dr. Otto Octavius, had switched bodies with him. And the reason he did that was because Spider-Man had beaten him up so much, almost to the point where he was dying, and he did it as a last ditch effort to save his own life. Well, Peter Parker, he thinks he kills Peter Parker, but really, Peter Parker was in the back of his mind. He didn't exactly switch bodies with him. And so what he did, he took on the identity of Peter Parker. The only good thing that he ever did was he ended up going to college and earning his doctorate. That was the only good thing he did. But then he ended up like buying out this one of these this science organization called Horizon Labs, and he called it Parker Industries. So when Peter eventually gets control of his body, thus and then transfers Otto Octavius' mind inside a computer. When he finds out about this, he thought, "Oh my gosh, what have you done? What have you?" And then he could not. And Parker Industries didn't last an entire year after that, and they ended up going bankrupt, and then folks hated Peter Parker after that.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh my God. But you know, I think I remember that metal that I was asking you about. The vibranium. Is that what Logan was injected with?
No, that's adamantium.
Oh.
Now, adamantium is indestructible too, because Wolverine didn't always have adamantium. I mean, although he had the claws, but they were bone. They were straight up bone. And so he goes through this. He goes through this program called Weapon X. And they give him the adamantium, but at the same time, he loses his memory of everything that happened before that.
Right.
Because before that, he remembered everything. He remembered his real name. Now, there was this miniseries called Wolverine Origins, where it was revealed that his real name wasn't Logan, it was actually James Howlett.
Really?
Yeah. Although we found out Howlett was actually his adopted name, but his last name was actually Logan. We find that out later. But adamantium, with his claws being, it wasn't just the claws, it was his entire his entire skeletal structure. I mean, in other words, you can punch him and you'll break your hand. But with the claws, you can cut through solid steel. And Wolverine's one of my favorite characters. He actually made his debut in an issue of the Incredible Hulk.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember, and I know the exact issue is Incredible Hulk number 181 in 1974. The Hulk was going up against this character called Wendigo, which was this character this is white character, and he's like this real rabid character. I mean, if he bites you, then you become him, which is quite unfortunate. Although I don't think the Hulk, I think the Hulk went untouched, or at least I hope he did. Well, of course he did. Otherwise, that would affect him forever. But the Incredible Hulk, what a lot of folks don't. I mean, it was another creation of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in 1962. And what happened was that Dr. Bruce Banner he was like had doctors. He had doctors in so much stuff. I mean, he was also a med when he briefly served in the U.S. military. There was one of his lab assistants named Rick Jones. I almost said Rick Ross. Why did I say Rick? I was thinking about his father-in-law, General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. But anyway, Rick Jones was out in the gamma bomb testing area, which was off limits. And so he's like, "What are you doing out here?" And then all of a sudden, the bomb goes off, and then he ended up getting. He caught all the gamma radiation. And so when he becomes angry or outraged, that's when he becomes the Hulk.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And true story, I used to be scared. And my mom and my mom, she knows this for a fact. I used to be scared of the Incredible Hulk. Huh? Okay, I'll edit that out. But true story. All right, with true story, when I was little, I used to be scared of the Incredible Hulk, and I was scared of both like the TV series and there was these made-for-TV movies that came out in the late '80s. I was even scared of them. Then one day, I was over at my uncle's house in West Shreveport, and there was an old episode of the Incredible Hulk on Sci-Fi, and And it came, and I walked in at we came at a very interesting time because it was at a scene where Bruce Banner hulks out. And my dad was standing exactly 8 feet behind me thinking I was going to freak out. And I'm just looking at him like, and then I was like, oh, okay. Then I started thinking about all the times that I was afraid of the Hulk when I was younger. And I looked at him, I was like, you mean to tell me that I used to be scared of that? I said, yeah. So now I like the Hulk.
I need to know everything about Bruce Wayne.
Okay, Bruce Wayne is the son of Martha and Thomas Wayne. And Dr. Thomas Wayne, he was he grew up rich. I mean his father was a doctor, and then his mother, her maiden name is Kane. She was also grew up in a wealthy family. So, but one day or one night they go to see this movie. And then they're coming back, and then all of a sudden this guy named Joe Chill murders Martha, and then kills Dr. Wayne right after that, and then just leaves. And all he wanted were the pearls that Martha was wearing. That's all he wanted. Mm-hmm. And when she said no, he pulled out the gun and just murdered her. And then Dr. Wayne went against her, and then Chill ends up murdering him. Now, for the longest time, it wasn't really said as to who murdered him, but then we find out the murderer's name was Joe Chill. And so, the only person to take care of Bruce was the butler, Alfred Pennyworth. And when he got older, he wanted to, he wanted to do more than just be, just be a millionaire. He wanted to protect he wanted to fight crime. And then he went overseas and learned all these different rituals and different martial arts styles. He went to this country called Nanda Parbat and learned like different disciplines. One thing about Batman, not only is he a superhero, he is the world's greatest detective. He honed a lot of detective skills as during his teenage years. Mm-hmm. And he's also an amazing escape artist, and he knows just about every form of martial arts you can imagine. Where it's not only can he fight crime, he can also beat someone. He can also beat someone up, and then he can also solve cases. Mm-hmm. So that's why a lot of folks consider Batman to be the world's greatest detective.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot his name. The guy that stays in the dark, born in the dark. Do you know what I'm talking about? The villain. I forgot his name. He has that mask over his nose and mouth. I forgot his name.
Is it Bane?
Bane, yeah.
Yeah, Bane. I don't really know that much about Bane. All I can tell you that he has this pack of venom that he wears, and this venom causes him to it's pretty much gains like maybe 10 to 15 times the muscle that he has. I mean, he could be about my size, and then all of a sudden he's about. Then later, next thing you know, he injects that venom in him, and he's about as big as, well, I don't know, Lou Ferrigno.
Wow.
He's also in the comics, a little more than 25 years ago, he fought Batman and broke his back.
Yeah.
And that also happened in The Dark Knight Rises. Anything else?
Can you tell me more about Joker?
Oh, the Joker. Now, the Joker. One thing that I've learned is recently there are about 3 different people that have called themselves the Joker, mm-hmm. and one of them was a guy named Jack Napier, who was the character that they used in the Batman movie, the first one that was directed by Tim Burton in '89, and also the one that was in Suicide Squad. Those two were Jack Napier. What happened was in the movie the Batman movie was directed by Tim Burton. Jack Napier was this this crime boss, and then and he wanted to like hijack some kind of stuff. They were at this plant. Well, Batman fought him, but then he tried to fight back, and then he tripped and then fell off in this vat of acid, and that's how he ended up getting the white skin and the green hair.
What?
Yes. And that also, keep in mind, that also happens in Suicide Squad. The only difference was he wasn't fighting Batman. He had, actually he was. He was fighting Batman. But then he did it a second time, but this time he had Harley Quinn. Back then she wasn't Harley Quinn, she was Dr. Harleen Quinzel.
Really?
And she was a psychiatrist. The messed up part is she was a psychiatrist for the institute that all the Batman villains are in, called Arkham Asylum.
What about Two-Face? Do you know him?
Two-Face was an attorney, used to be an attorney that went by the name of Harvey Dent. Now there are different origins to his story. Well, Harvey Dent was just straight up bipolar. That man was as bipolar as they could come. I mean, and he ends up. I mean, there's like two different stories. Like one of them was that he ended up getting. Somebody sprayed half of his body with this acid, and next thing you know, then he ends up getting set on fire. That was one. Another one was that he was, and this was in Batman Forever back in '95. It was his court case, and Batman was like hiding somewhere in the courtroom, and he waited for the exact moment where he would go all bipolar, and he caught him. And he had this acid in his head, and like, yeah! But I've heard, but I really, as in terms of the comics, I really don't know his exact origin. Mm-hmm. Although he is a straight up bad guy, and I mean,
how does the world of comics influence your life?
Well, usually I let it influence my life only according to certain heroes. Superman, he uses powers, to fight truth, justice, and peace for all humanity. He doesn't believe in self-preservation at all. Batman, with Superman, I always would say, like with me reading comics, and then with me just being a person, I don't just use my knowledge and my hobbies. I don't just keep to myself. I do it I share it with others. Now, Batman, I try not to, because even though, when Batman is pretty much, a bully, but he's only a bully for villains. Although at one point, he formulated different ways of taking down all his co-members of the Justice League in the event that they will go out of line.
Batman.
And there was this comics magazine called Wizard Entertainment that once voted him in 2001 as the villain of the year, because there was a story arc in Justice League where he basically took down everyone else. We found out it was because he was under the influence of some villain, which is kind of hard because Batman, he's very strong-willed. If you try to use mind control on him, good luck. Because he like I said, not only is he not only disciplined in martial arts, he's also, because one thing about martial arts, when you're disciplined in martial arts, you're also, it's not just fighting, it's also discipline, and it disciplines you. It disciplines your mind becomes disciplined. And he eventually fought it. He's like, I don't know what you did, but you're gonna pay. But it's mainly Superman, because Superman was the first ever superhero. He was the first everything. I mean, he predated every other superhero that came later. Batman, Wonder Woman, Captain America, all them, because he debuted really during the Great Depression during 1938, like right before World War II started. And one thing about Superman, he was actually created by two teenagers, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, in Cleveland, Ohio. They went to school together. They said, "Hey, are you good at drawing?" He said, "Yeah, are you good at writing? All right, let's go. Let's create a hero and all that." And that's how that happened. And there were other characters like Supergirl was actually, I don't think Supergirl was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. It was created. I always forget who created Supergirl. Superboy was created by Jerry Siegel by himself, and he did this right after Joe Shuster decided to enlisted an army and decided to fight during World War II. And Superboy wasn't another character. This was Tales of Superman when he was growing up. And when Shuster found out about this, he was like, "You have got to be kidding me."
Brianna, did you want to say something?
Shouldn't Thor be the first superhero because he was a god before he became in the comics?
That's a good question because Thor is a lot older than folks think. Now Thor actually started. Thor is a god of Norse mythology. But Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in the 60s decided, "Oh, okay, we like this guy. Let's make a superhero out of him." But Thor does technically he predates just about any character that comes out of comics, although the comics character wasn't created until the 60s. But yeah, I think so. Because honestly, he's been doing this even before Krypton even exploded.
Say it again.
Well, because Thor, he was the god of thunder. He wouldn't be on there even before technically before Krypton exploded.
Right, and that's where Superman was born, right?
Yeah, he was born on the planet Krypton. It exploded. Now, for the longest time, a lot of readers, and me included, and then a lot of folks was left to believe that it exploded due to natural causes. We find out later that it was actually some alien from a different planet who destroyed it. Yeah, because there's this upcoming Superman miniseries called The Man of Steel. That's going to be written by this one of my favorite comic writers, Brian Michael Bendis, and it talks about in this miniseries Superman goes up against this guy after he finds out about him. He finds out that he destroyed Krypton himself, and looking forward to it. It actually comes out at the end of this month, if I'm not mistaken, May 30th. It's a mini series that's actually going to start then and then go all the way through next month.
I want to ask a question about I found this fact. So is Santa Claus really a mutant?
If he is, that's news to me. Well, you have to think about it. If you ever heard, the "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," you would read the line where all I have to do is like do his nose like that, and all of a sudden he could basically like teleport from the rooftop of someone's house all the way into their living room, or it could basically shrink his molecules down and then go through the chimney, then come out of the chimney, and then he comes through the living room and he's whole. So, but now that I think about it, that kind of does make sense.
It does, actually. Can I ask you another question? It's kind of based on science, but it's about mutation. We know that cancer is a form of mutation of our cells. So, does that say that people who suffer from cancer are mutants in some degree?
You know what? Honestly, I've never thought of it that way, because when you think of cancer, you a lot of times you think of a person, like a person's body withering away, but I don't know. Like cancer is a mutation, but I think when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created X-Men, I'm quite sure they didn't. They ended up getting. I mean, with the mutation that they had in mind, they ended up getting these powers, and in a way, some of them end up going through some kind of transformation. And a lot of it is permanent. I'm trying to think of a character who that happened with. Oh, Mystique. She didn't always have blue skin.
Really?
No, she didn't always have blue skin. But then when she ended up getting powers, that's when the blue skin happened. Because mainly her powers were shapeshifting. She could shapeshift into anyone. But the only thing is that when a lot of times when these folks get powers, when these folks get when the mutation kicks in, they don't. A lot of times it lasts them for the rest of their life, and they don't die unless it's of natural causes or of something else and not anything related to the mutation. Well, that's a new one for me.
That's a deep question. I mean,
That's a very deep question. Yes, because
It is a mutation in your cells.
it's a mutation of your cells, but a lot of times it doesn't. When somebody has cancer, I think the cells mutate, not necessarily for the good, but all these characters in comics when they become mutants, it's usually a lot of times it's for the good because they end up getting powers and all that.
This is kind of way back too. It's kind of deep, but we know like the first people were people of color, and then the mutation of albinism or something caused their skin to turn white, and they moved up north just so that they could survive because they could no longer stay like in the south where all the sun was.
Yeah.
That's a mutation. So
It is.
it's just is it kind of like survival of the fittest or something like that?
Yes, it is survival of the fittest because folks who aren't mutants, they don't understand, and because they don't understand a lot, sometimes in life we despise of things that we don't always understand. With mutants. Mutants are, the X-Men for the longest time they were called they were considered, a group of people protecting the world that fears and hates them.
Right.
And when folks with, because folks like that, folks who have, like albino, I can understand why, because folks down here, we're not as. Back then they were. I mean, this isn't the case now, but back then, folks weren't really educated with stuff like that, as we are now. And then also, because of this awful heat, even now, there ain't no way in the world. I mean, there's no way in the world that someone with albino skin would survive.
So speaking of albino, and I'm like interjecting on the interview, but the Black Lightning. Have you seen Black Lightning?
Yes.
So there's a villain in Black Lightning.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking
albino.
about. Yes.
What's his? I can't even think of the guy's name.
You know what? I knew his name. I'm a little behind on episodes of Black Lightning. I watched the first 6 episodes, but then after.
But that's not Marvel, right? That's
DC. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really good.
I watched one episode.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix, so I binge
It's also on the CW, but I think they stopped showing episodes. So
the season is over.
yeah, the season's over. They're probably going
But
to.
the first season is on Netflix now.
Oh, okay, great. I'll have to catch up then. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And he has the whole complex of he doesn't go out in the daylight.
Yeah.
That's part of his whole thing. So he does all of his villain deeds at night.
Well, that was a guy on Wolverine that was the same. That mutant, isn't he the same that couldn't stand the sun? Or was that a different?
I'm trying to think of who you're talking about.
And Professor X kept him hidden.
In X-Men: The Last Stand, there was a character that didn't. I mean, he was actually in a hospital. His mutant power is he could cure mutation. And there was one scene where Beast, that was played by Kelsey Grammer, he comes in, he touches he touches it, and all of a sudden it's blue fur.
Oh, the little boy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Magneto didn't really like this kid, so he tried. So he and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants to try to go and kill him. And one of the messed up parts is Kitty Pryde, when I was played by Ellen Page, tried to save him, and she tried to fake. Now her power is intangibility. In other words, she can walk through stuff. She could also disrupt electricity, by the way, or anything mechanical. She tries to run through the wall, and all of a sudden she just runs into it.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And yeah, that was when the Juggernaut went up against him. I would say what that famous line that he did, but this is a family show, and also I know two people that probably go right upside my head. But anyway, I'm just going to say all but the last word. I'm the Juggernaut.
Let me see. I think I have another fact about Wonder Woman, and you can tell me if this is true.
Okay.
When she first joined the Justice Society of America in 1942, the group made her their secretary and originally never allowed her to take an active part in most of their interests.
I think I know why. Because they didn't really the Justice Society back then. Some of the they thought that they thought that a woman wasn't really capable of, which I think is complete nonsense. A woman. I mean, I'm sorry, but a woman is just as capable of doing anything that a man can do, and that speaks to all facets of life. And then also Wonder Woman, she's an Amazonian princess. She's from the island of Themyscira. Now, in the comics, speaking of Wonder Woman, she's currently trying to figure out if she was really born of clay, or if she is the biological daughter of Hippolyta and Zeus. Now, for the longest time, the origin was she was born of clay, but then DC did this thing that I and a lot of other a lot of readers don't approve of, they started this new DC universe called the New 52, where a lot of the characters, their origins are retold. Now, some of the other characters, their origins I really wasn't, I didn't really approve of, but then with Wonder Woman's origin being, she was born, being the biological daughter of Hippolyta and Zeus, that makes sense. And also, those bracelets that she wears, they did a backstory where about why she wears the bracelets. It's because being the daughter of Hippolyta, being the daughter of Zeus, which is like the Thunderer, the god of lightning and all that. The only reason she wears the bracelets is because she ended up getting his powers of becoming living thunder. And the bracelets suppress those powers. In other words, she takes them off. She becomes living thunder that can beat the snot out of you.
Is it true that ever since the biblical story of Jesus, and how he's our savior and all that, hasn't man always trying to create this hero, this person that can save us? And do you think that has something to do with all this stuff, the superheroes and the comics and all that stuff?
That, of course, because a lot of these comics, all these characters that have created these superheroes, you can't tell me that they haven't been to church.
Well, and then if you look at the times that they were actually created, like you talked about Superman and how he was the original superhero, and the timeline on which he was created, which kind of set the tone for the others.
Yeah.
Superman was created during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
The Great Depression, everybody you know, the market had tanked, nobody had money, everything, everybody was poor, so they felt like they needed somebody to save them. They needed some encouragement, something positive. And so I think, like, I was just listening to you talk about the timelines, and you know, this superhero was created during Great Depression, and then one's being created during World War II.
Yeah.
They were created, the original ones, during a time where our country and our world was at crisis. And that's kind of the source, which goes back to they were created as a source of hope for people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly because, again, Superman was created during the Great Depression, and yeah, and then, you know, all these, and then also all these characters were created at the time that they were, and also with purposes. It was Superman would be, you know, to serve as a beacon of hope, and then Captain America was created during World War II by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Now this was while the war was going on, and this was pretty much, and it showed where, you know, where the Americans won the war, and guess what? There were, and I learned, there were actual men and women who served in the U.S. military during that time that was reading that book, and a lot of them were really inspired by Captain America, and that's and some of them will, and some of them have said that gave them the inspiration of fighting, and of winning the war. That's why I like. I mean,
Hence the name Captain America.
yeah. And the best of thing is, you know, Captain America, you know, he was shorter than me, and he was about my height, and he barely weighed like 120 pounds. No, seriously. But then he wanted to serve the country, and every time that he did, all the recruiters said, nope, too small. But then there was a scientist, Dr. Abraham Erskine, who didn't look at him in terms of his frame. He looked at it in terms of what he believed in. And he said, okay, I'm going to pass you. And there's this thing that we started called the Super Soldier program. Come with me. We'll make something out of it. And they did. And then all of a sudden, this guy's about like 6'2", and about 225 pounds. And all of that is 1% body fat, if you will. And in other words, what happened in the comics actually happened in the movie, in Captain America: The First Avenger back in 2011. And then, as soon as he gets his powers, what happens? An agent of Hydra murders Dr. Erskine. I mean, right after that. And the only reason that he murdered was because so no other character could become a super soldier. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, but there was this one line in Captain America: The First Avenger, where he's fighting the Red Skull the second time, right before his plane crashes along right off the edge of New York. Red Skull asked him, "What makes you think you're the super soldier? What makes you so special?" And Captain America says, "Nothing. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn." And that is what I saw. I was like, yes. I mean, because Captain America, he knows that even though he's a super soldier, and he's fighting the Red Skull, he's no better than anyone else, and he's no better than anyone else, and he knows that. See, a lot of folks, they look at superheroes, in terms of their abilities, but they don't look at them in terms of the person. I'll look at it in terms of the person. Yeah, Captain America, he's this guy who just wants to fight. He just wants to fight for good. But he knows that he's no different than anyone else. Yeah, Superman. This guy could have been all kinds of bitter because he's on a planet that dies. But then he has all these powers. He could actually grow up and become all mad and kill somebody. But he had two loving adopted parents, Martha and John, as a kid. That you can't tell me they didn't instill the good book in him. You can't tell me that. And then, you know, and then he never, I mean, he knows that, he knows of his Kryptonian heritage. He knows that he's Kryptonian. He knows all this, but he understands that, but he goes by the way he was raised. And he never forgets how, he never forgets how he's raised. Because, you know, there was a line in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. You know, because the main character of Star Wars was played by Chris Pratt, and he was this his father. He finds out who his father is, and finds out that after he was born, his father instilled cancer into his mom, and he never knew his father. The guy that he was raised was this guy named Yondu, who was actually a character in the comics, who pretty much raised him after he ended up on another planet. And Yondu said, "That may be your father, but that ain't your daddy."
Brianna, I want to ask a question.
Well, how Captain America got the powers, he had to be taken to a test.
Yeah.
Like, they injected him with penicillin first, and then injected him with something else.
Oh, I love that line in that movie too, because as he injects him with this, he's like, "Oh, that was quick." He said, "That was penicillin." Then he goes, into this machine that goes inside this machine. Then they pump him with this stuff. And at first he's like screaming in pain because he's like, and then all of a sudden Dr. Earth's like, "Turn it off." He said, "No, I can do this." And he goes through the whole thing and he becomes Captain America. Or it doesn't become Captain America, he just ends up, he's still Steve Rogers, he just ends up being taller and having 1% body fat. And this ripped specimen of a man.
So how do, I'm sorry.
But then, like, someone steals some of the vial, and he goes and cause destruction because he's just chasing this person that stole the vial.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. He caught up with the guy, but some of the serum, the serum is in his beaker. He drops the serum, spills, but then he catches the guy. He's about to knock him out, and all of a sudden he ends up biting down on his poison that instantly kills him. And the last thing he says is, "Cut off one head, two will grow in its place. Hail Hydra." And Hydra, to me, is almost like is pretty much an advanced version of Nazis, a whole bunch of Nazis. And then the guy that over this is the Red Skull, who's German, whose real name is Johann Schmidt.
How do the heroes' belief system amplifies their powers? Like, how does it reflect their powers? Just like when you said about Professor X and Magneto, making that comparison to Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, how did their powers, how did their belief system magnify their powers?
It really depends on what kind of walk of life they came from. Mm-hmm. You have Professor X, who grew up in a house full of loving parents, although his adopted brother turns out ends up becoming the Juggernaut later. Yeah, that's true. Professor X's adopted brother is Kate Marco, who ends up becoming the Juggernaut. But that's the only reason he becomes a Juggernaut is because he's a jerk and he hated his actual parents and all that. But Magneto is a survivor of the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. Now, you would think that him being a survivor of the Holocaust, he would try to create a better life for himself. But in this instance, he was still a little bitter about being about what he had to go through. So instead of fighting to have a better life, instead of instead of being good, he wanted to use it. He wanted to use his powers for self-preservation. In other words, he wanted to use his powers to take his frustrations out on everyone. Oh, by the way, Magneto is the first villain the X-Men faced.
Really?
Yeah, X-Men #1 in 1963.
Okay, so can you give me your opinion on Black Panther?
Black Panther. Oh, do you mean the movie? Or
And just how it reflects in life itself.
Black Panther is the shining example that even people of different ethnicities can prosper. Mm-hmm. And it's because he's the king of a fictitious African nation, Wakanda, which is the most technological based country in comics, not just in Marvel, but in comics in general. And I tell you, a lot of folks really didn't know who Black Panther was until this movie came out, and now that they've seen it, and now that they know who the character is, a lot of folks have become empowered, which I think is a wonderful thing. I mean, but I've known who Black Panther was ever since I was a teenager, and I knew that he was and even then I knew that. I mean, I became empowered then because that let me know that even though I'm even a young black man, a young black boy back then, I could do whatever I could do whatever I want and prosper. Mm-hmm. And true story. You see that comic hero to over there, the Black Panther one?
Yes.
I actually made it for I actually made one for one of my mom's classmates, and she had asked me to make one for her, and she had told me that I thank you for making this. I feel so empowered. I was like, all right. I mean, a lot of folks have become. I mean, it's not just black people. It's folks of other different ethnicities, which I think is great.
It is.
And I think that's the whole concept of what Stan Lee and Jack Kirby wanted, and what they intended for the character when they created 1966. Because these are two white men, but one thing about them, neither one of them had racist bones in their body, especially not Stan Lee. I mean, Stan Lee is, and he always refers to ever since, as long as he always refers to everyone as true believers. Whenever he did, he would narrate it like a lot of Marvel cartoons and since the late 70s and early 80s, and his opening words were, "Hey, true believers," and all that. And there are other characters of different ethnicities other than Black Panther. There's Luke Cage. Luke Cage was this guy that had this impenetrable skin. He was in Harlem. At first, he went by the name Power Man. But then, over time, I guess Marvel had figured, okay, let's give him a different name. So they decided to go with Luke Cage, although his real name is Carl Lucas. And then but here's the thing. Luke Cage may have been a spin-off show from Marvel's Jessica Jones, but Luke Cage predated Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones in the comics didn't even exist until like 2004. Luke Cage had been around a lot longer than that. But the only reason they, with the Marvel Studios decided to bring them in later is because of their relationship in the comics. In the comics, Jessica Jones and Luke Cage are married with a daughter.
So is this like a history lesson? Like, I know it's not actually like history, but I mean, all this stuff is like predated and all that.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, because here's the one thing: movies and TV shows, they don't always go by what happened in the comics. Not entirely. They use it as a blueprint, but they usually don't go by that. Well, some of these writers, they'll come up with stuff to make things interesting, like this upcoming Captain Marvel movie that's coming out next year. Captain Marvel is currently a character in Marvel whose real name is Carol Danvers. She's a human being who has this alien DNA that gives her powers to fly, absorb energy, and then manipulate it, and then also super strength. The way she became Captain Marvel, she was enlisted into the Air Force. And then there was this alien race called the Kree who kidnapped her, and then ended up torturing her. But then there was these good Kree people that decided, okay, she's almost dead, let's save her. And then it ended up saving her life by giving her Kree DNA. In the comics, now in the movie that's coming up next year, they're telling her origin a little differently. They don't really talk about the fact that she was Air Force, and the reason being is because of the Hal Jordan Green Lantern, which is in DC. He was Air Force, and he ended up getting a Green Lantern ring when he found that this alien named Abin Sur had crashed near the Air Force base that he was stationed on. He said, "Hey, I'm dying. Here's the ring. Good luck." That's it. Yeah, but with Captain Marvel, they're doing away with the fact that she's Air Force, all because of that, which to me doesn't make sense. Because Carol Danvers being Air Force is what makes Carol Danvers being an air woman is what makes her a great character. But sometimes these writers and artists, sometimes these writers on these movies and TV shows, sometimes there are times where they're trying to get you to trust their judgment. Yeah, but there's some comics movies that are very, very bad. Hulk was the one in 2003 was very bad because they tried to well, for starters, the casting was great. I mean, you have Sam Elliott as Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. Yeah, that's great. But the movie is only good. The casting is only good as the writing. And then they tried to make the Absorbing Man Bruce Banner, the Hulk's dad. No, in the comics, the Absorbing Man's name is Crusher Creel. And then they no. That was poorly written, poorly directed. Now you have other movies like Black Panther, the first Avengers movie, Thor, Iron Man. Those were all. It was a little different, but they were told. But the way that they went about them, it wasn't by the book, but the way they did it, it worked. Mm-hmm. I mean, with Iron Man, he was, Tony Stark was a weapons designer for Stark Industries. It ended up getting the reins to Stark Industries right after he graduated from MIT, which I think he was maybe 18. And to that point, Obadiah Stane was the, he ended up getting a race to it right after Tony Stark's parents were killed in a car accident. But then he gets back, hey, this is my company now. This belongs to my parents. You sit down. You be humble. And Stane was very mad about that. And so he actually sold some of Stark's technology to these terrorists overseas. That kind of happened in the comics. And then Tony Stark having the arc reactor. The only reason he had an arc reactor is because when one of his weapons exploded, and then there was shrapnel that was only about inches away from his heart. And the arc reactor was used as a magnet to keep those shards away from his heart, so it wouldn't kill him. All that happened, and then the first armor that he wore when he escaped, that happened too. But the only difference is he wore that a lot longer in the comics. He didn't get his current armor. I mean, the armor that's similar to the one that he has now, he didn't get that till probably 1964.
Can you tell me about Cerebro?
All right, Cerebro is the program that can only be used by mutant telepaths, or like Professor X or Jean Grey, and Cerebro is used to. They use Cerebro to find mutants that are displaced, and usually Cerebro was really responsible for Professor X recruiting a lot of mutants, because he used that in order to find mutants. Because the one thing about him, he wanted to find mutants because he wanted to help them live prosperous lives. And that's why he founded the Xavier Institute for Higher Learning, because it wasn't just somewhere where they could become X-Men. It's somewhere where they could get a great education and live prosperous lives. Because Professor X, he was an educator first. Professor X he taught classes and all that. And some of the older X-Men taught classes too. And that was the legacy that he left. That's what. But Cerebro, back to about Cerebro, that he used that only to find mutants.
Do you want to be a mute? I would like to be a mute.
Oh,
Like,
On
I would
Sundays.
like to be I would like to be that Professor X. I like him.
oh, you would like to be a telepath?
Yes.
Well, I don't know if I want to do that, because
Yeah, you don't want
there's
to know.
there's that old saying that goes, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. I mean, it really is, and I don't think
That'll be the power you choose.
I don't know if I always wanted to. What power I've always wanted, but I thought, but I retracted later. Multiplicity. That way, all my duplicates can just go out and do whatever. I can just stay at home and do nothing. But then I decided not to, because who's to say that those folks was like, hey, I don't want to do this. How about you do it? All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I really had a lot of fun. And there's one thing that one mistake I made that I want to correct right now. The Juggernaut is not Professor X's adopted brother. It's his stepbrother. There's a difference. So charge that to my head, not to my heart. And also, I want to thank my new friends Cassandra and Brianna for coming by and asking such great questions, and also Felicia Sweetie, my mom, and my sister for also contributing. And also I want to thank Felicia Sweetie for inviting me to this, and Lord willing, let's do it again next year. All right, it's time to give away a free t-shirt. All right, last week's episode I asked, what is the name of the gods that the Kryptonians worshipped? Well, the correct answer is Rayo. Now, 8 people have answered correctly, and because they've answered correctly, their names have been entered in the drawing for a free tee. And that drawing takes place right now. So, the winner of the free tee for this week's episode of the show is Stephanie Coleman from Duboc, Louisiana. So, congratulations, Stephanie. You win yourself a free Comic Hero tee. All right, here's the question for next week's episode, and this is also a Superman question. True or false? Despite him being older, Superman is actually younger than Supergirl. Everyone who answers correctly will be entered in a free tee for next week's episode of the show. All right then, let's get to the comics I bought this week.
Comic books I bought this week.
All right, first up is Justice League No Justice #1. The Flash #46. Hal Jordan to Green Lantern Corps #42. Hal Jordan to Green Lantern Corps #44. Wonder Woman #42. Wonder Woman #43. Falcon number 7. Exiles number 3. X-Men Blue number 25. X-Men Blue number 27. Teen Titans number 18. The Invincible Iron Man number 597. The Despicable Deadpool number 297. And finally, Detective Comics number 970. Alright. That's 14 I bought, which brings the total number of comics that I bought since December of 1997 to 8,673. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Here's a question again for a free tee for next week's episode of the show. True or false? Despite him being older, Superman is actually younger than Supergirl. Everyone who answers correctly will be entered in a drawing for a free tee in next week's episode of the show. And congratulations to Stephanie Colbert from Dubach, Louisiana, who won a free tee in this week's episode. Alright, it's birthday time here on the Comic Hero Show, and happy birthday to John Birch, Vernesta Gray, Celeste Jackson, Rebecca Pesnell, Matt Anderson, Katrina Hurd, Allison Hall, Samantha Welch, Ryan Curtis, Celeste Presley, Mike T, Chris Owen, Mike Green, Andrew Dog, Courtney Key, and a very special happy birthday to the person who invited me to Comic Book Day over at the Houghton Branch at Bossier Parish Library, Felicia Sweeney. And also, happy Mother's Day to all the moms. I hope y'all got the I hope you all got the pampering and everything y'all deserved. I know my mom did, because my sister and I took her out to eat over at Silver Star Smokehouse in Bossier City. And also I want to say happy Mother's Day to all the mothers who are no longer with us. Because even though you're no longer with us, that means we can't celebrate. That doesn't mean that we can't celebrate you. And also I want to say congratulations to all the graduates, whether you graduate from pre-K, kindergarten, elementary, middle school, high school, or college, or even seminary school. And a special congratulations to my friend, the Professor Nick Harrison, who ended up getting his master's degree from Grambling State University. I want to congratulate my friend Derica Adams, who ended up getting her master's degree from the University of Louisiana at Monroe. And I want to congratulate my two friends, Liz Newberger and Cody Williams, who ended up getting their undergrads from ULM. And I also want to congratulate my friend Kit LeBlanc, who ended up getting his undergrad from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. But also, I want to congratulate Matthew Petit, or should I say Dr. Matthew Petit, on getting his doctorate from the University of Louisiana at Monroe. And also I want to congratulate one of my youngins. Oh, by the way, I played the piano I played the piano at the Lake Chapel CB Church in Homer, Louisiana. Sanaya McGee was part of the youth choir. She's now part of the mass choir now at Lake Chapel. I want to congratulate her on graduating from Lincoln Prep in Grambling, Louisiana, and she's on to Grambling State University. So, congratulations, Sanaya, and good luck at Grambling. All right, you know what? That I'm still over the moon over that Q&A session over at Comic Book Day in Houghton this past Saturday. It was really a lot of fun, and I want AVC, everyone who's over AVC now. AVC is the company who is over Comic-Cons around here, like Louisiana Comic-Con the Anime Festival, Longview Comic-Con, Mississippi Comic-Con. I want y'all to take notice. And also the folks over at GeekCon and ShreveCon that we have at Centenary College in Shreveport every December. If y'all didn't know me then, you better ask somebody, and you need to watch the show because I want to be a guest at one of your cons. And I know several other people who will vouch for me. But anyway, I'm Victor Nolly on the Comic Hero. I'll see you next time for episode 214 back at Southern Rails Comics and Games. So until then, be safe, be blessed, be a hero. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms, and congratulations to all the graduates.